Hello and welcome to the Wisden Cricket Weekly podcast. This summer, Wisden are proudly sponsored by Kia UK. Kia are leading the way in electrification with their groundbreaking range of EVs, including the EV9, EV6 and the UK Car of the Year, the EV3. Kia's movement that inspires moment wants to help cricket fans get closer to the action. Listen every week for Kia's movement that inspires moment for chances to win exciting experiences at the Kia Oval this summer. What a show we have for you today. The World Test Championship final kicks off in 2 days' time at Lords. We have the England squad for the first test of their series against India with one surprising recall in there. Jimmy's taking loads of wickets in the blast, and Liam Dawson is back in an England shirt for the first time in 2.5 years, and he's taking wickets. I'm Rana, and with me today are Ben Gardner and the cricket writer and friend of the show, Dan Gallan. But first, here's Mark Butcher on the England squad for the first test against India. Butcher, we finally have the first England squad for the first India test. The big news is that Jamie Overton has received his first test call-up in 3 years. He's only played one test at Headingley against New Zealand in 2022. There's no decision made on what the top seven will look like. Jacob Bethel is in, but there's no confirmation as to what his role will be, if there is a role for him at all in the first place. Matt Potts is out. Bryden Carse and Chris Wokes are in. They're fit again. Gus Atkinson misses out through injury. No Jofra Archer yet, but he may be in contention for the second test match. First up, Jamie Overton. Slight surprise that he's in the squad, but he's bowled really well from the short bits that we've seen him this season.
Yeah, and looked good. Looked to be bowling sort of quickly and straight in the first ODI against West Indies at Edgbaston before the finger injury occurred on that return catch. I'm guessing that he's there as a sort of as a backup to one of Tongue or Carse. In that, I guess the interesting thing with no Atkinson is that Carse will likely take the new ball, be the sort of direct replacement for Atkinson, albeit that he is a slightly sort of heavier, faster version. And that Wokes being back in means that Sam Cook is more than likely a kind of like a stand-in for the other new ball option in the side. So, you know, the attack looks as though it will be Wokes, Carse, Tongue, Stokes, Bashir in the starting lineup from what the squad looks like anyway, with Overton as backup, with Cook as backup for Wokes as the sort of the like for like new ball specialist in the 11. And so, you know, the only other question, as you rightly mentioned at the top there, is Bethel, does he get in? Or does he not, really? Or whether or not the batting lineup stays exactly the same as it was against Zimbabwe.
What do you think that they will do? Not what you think should happen. What do you think they will do around Bethel?
I honestly don't know. His spot, when the time comes, will more than likely be 3. And so therefore it means that Ollie Pope is sort of under the gun, rightly or wrongly. I mean, I don't subscribe to the view that he's massively under pressure and should be the guy to fall through the trap door. But it might turn out that if they make the decision that Bethel is the future, is the present, I should say, rather than the future, then that may well be the spot that he finds himself in, as he did reasonably successfully in New Zealand in his first go at it. So, but in terms of what I think they'll do, I have no idea. Honestly, I really don't. I mean, kind of inclined to go along with whatever decision they make is likely to be the right one. But generally speaking, when they make these big calls, they turn out to be the right ones in the long run. So we'll just wait and see. I mean, it's a little bit exciting. We don't know, and that's quite cool. But other than that, I guess really the key or the issue for England is kind of like the balance of the bowling attack in terms of the styles of bowling doesn't feel as though it's exactly as they would want it right now. But given, you know, the injury to Atkinson just recently, things have been thrown up in the air again. So they've ended up with Carson with Carson Tongue, they've got two very inexperienced guys who kind of operate in a similar manner in the bowling attack, with Cast then now having to sort of be elevated to a new ball bowler, which he did well in Pakistan, where, of course, you're only really kind of getting through a handful of overs while the ball is brand spanking new. So you're basically an old ball, middle overs bowler anyway. So the skill set required for Test match cricket, red ball in England, tend to be, as Anderson and Broad did for all those years, it's being very, very accurate, top of off stump, and not leaving it. That's where your success comes from in this country. It is slightly less heavy ball, intimidatory bowling, because the pitches don't tend to reward that here as much as they might do in other places.
What do you make of that tactical shift? There'll be a lot of people watching or listening to this who may have not followed England that closely over the last year or so. Everyone knows how England bat, but they have, since Anderson and Broad, have made quite a big tactical change in how they construct a bowling lineup. They basically have one classical English seamer. As you said, Sam Cook is in the squad but unlikely to play. That person is likely to be Chris Wokes. Then alongside that, they have two faster guys. Gus Atkinson has performed that role a lot over the last year. Biden Carter has done it over the winter. Josh Tongue did it against Zimbabwe. So it's 1 and 2, basically, which is obviously very different to what England did for 15 years with Broad and Anderson, and sometimes with Wokes as well. What do you make of that? Because that's actually quite a seismic change in how you go about putting together a bowling attack.
Well, it is, but I think it's as much about the personnel at your disposal as it is anything else. If you go back a generation before then, England's sort of Fab Four with Ashley Giles tagged on the end was very similar to that. Matthew Hogarth was new ball, then you wouldn't see him unless a Kookaburra or a Duke started swinging it randomly at various times in the innings. And then you had tall, bouncy, and fast in Harmison. You had tall, very unpleasant ball nipping back in, while Harmison could move it away in Flintoff. And then you had your reverse swing specialist in Simon Jones. So in terms of a theory, or in terms of a sort of a building of a seam bowling attack, it's not brand new. But what it is trying to make the most out of the resources that you have at your disposal. And I think identifying the fact that a cricket innings, say for example, it lasts for 120 overs, it's going to go through lots and lots of different phases. You need to have bowlers who are at their best when one of those phases comes along. There's no point in picking, we went through a long period of time where you pick sort of 4 very English, swingy, new ball type successful bowlers who would then all find themselves redundant after the ball is 30 overs old. And therefore, that is not a proper bowling attack. And so what they're trying to do is to cover all bases, all scenarios over a ball's aging. And that includes obviously having the spinner in there as well.
And how well set up do you think they are for this series? We've seen quite a few flat pitches so far this summer, and this is a very inexperienced English attack for a marquee series. Chris Wokes aside, no one in this squad, from a bowling point of view, has more than 10 Test matches under their belt.
No, I mean, again, it's exciting because you don't know. And the one thing that England will hopefully back themselves to do is to score big runs. I mean, Bumrah is the wild card, isn't he? I mean, he is so damn good that he could sort of turn a series or win a series by himself. But I guess England will be thinking to themselves, well, we can make up for our lack of experience in the bowling attack if we pile on huge quantities of runs at a fast rate and put the opposition under pressure in that manner. I don't think it's a risky strategy. I think it's probably the best one that they've got. And so that'll be the challenge. Can England score enough runs? And in fact, it doesn't matter about the pace you score them, but the likelihood is it will be quickly because that's the way they play. In order to mask some of the deficiencies in experience and in some cases raw skill in the bowling attack.
And then finally on Matt Potts, he's someone who's been in a lot of England squads recently, not played a lot of games, but he's been involved pretty consistently over the last 3 years. He's not included when there are a lot of guys out injured. that's quite a big blow for him, and he's done pretty well for England every time he's taken the park.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it probably speaks to what they would require from him, given his particular set of skills. I sound like Liam Neeson. And I think that, again, they've looked at him and thought, well, he's not quite as good a new ball bowler as either Wokes or Cook, which is interesting. I mean, that's obviously their view, particularly as far as Cook is concerned, because of his complete and utter lack of experience at this level. And then they think that he doesn't quite fit into the role required for the older ball, more aggressive type bowlers, and so therefore he finds himself on the outside. Very, very tough on him. But England don't do sort of sentiment, barring maybe one or two people, but they don't do sentiment in terms of selection, and it'll be, they'll pick the right guy for the job that they have identified they need them to do.
I think Potts suffers when Stokes is fit to bowl. If Stokes is able to bowl lots of overs, Potts' strength really is how durable he is. And if Stokes is bowling lots of overs, that's a 5-man attack, then you don't actually need someone who can bowl long spells that much. And with Stokes fit and Stokes bowling well,
Stokes is 3 players, isn't he? So he kind of he ticks a lot of boxes. And I don't know what the news is on Ben. I don't know whether a decision has been made that he's going to play in one of these upcoming Lions games.
He's not.
Okay. So I mean that's interesting in itself. I mean he and the medical staff obviously feel that he's durable enough and is fit enough to kind of get through volumes at test intensity, without having to test it out elsewhere. And again, you have to trust them, and you have to trust him on that. I guess he's experienced enough and knows how important all this stuff is enough not to take a risk on his own body, and take a risk on leaving the team sort of short. Which is ultimately what the biggest issue would be. And so if he's given himself a pass, the medical staff have given himself a pass. You have to believe that he's there to play a full part. The one thing you would hope is that that as captain, he reins himself in from the 13 over spell. That's probably something that he needs to put away now in the latter stages of his career, and allow other people to kind of pick up some of that slack, even if it's going well for him.
Still 2 weeks or so to go to that first test match. As you say, it'll be absolutely fascinating to see what they do in the top 7. I'm sure, as always, they'll announce a team 48 hours before the toss.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's great, isn't it? I mean, it's good for everybody, because everyone can get their angst and stuff out of the way, or their displeasure at the decision out of the way before the test match starts, and then focus in on the actual job rather than speculating what might happen. But also, that I like the confidence that it shows in the decision making, and whether people like the decisions that have been made or whether they don't. It means that the team they know what they're doing, they're happy with it, and they'll live and die by those calls.
Just finally, are there shades of Peterson in 2005 in this Bethel chat? In that there is this shiny new toy, who's we know is really exciting, but there's also a very settled team. Do you think that there's similarities in that?
No, I don't actually. I mean, there are quite a lot of differences in that. In that obviously Peterson came in 2005. I'd gone out of the team at the end of the South Africa series with a broken wrist, was injured, couldn't play anyway. Rob Key hadn't quite sort of satisfied whoever it was he needed to satisfy that he was the man to take up the number 3 post. And Graham Thorpe was 30. What would he have been? 35 maybe. And let's not forget that Peterson in South Africa had made 300s or something against baying crowd, with baying crowds against him in his former hometown, and had scored an enormous volume of runs. Bethel's thing is very different in that all of this is pretty much promise. He looks great. Still hasn't scored a 100. Doesn't have that sort of record behind him, and certainly isn't as sort of brash and self confident as somebody like Peterson. And the other side to that is that people always forget about the Peterson issue was that when it came to Graham Thorpe not being in that Ashes team for 2005, it was actually Ollie Pope that came in and replaced him, not Kevin Peterson, because England made 2 changes in that settled team.
Ollie Pope,
not Ollie Pope, Ian Bell. Sorry, it's another redhead with a nice cover drive. It was Ian Bell. So Ian Bell batted at 3 and Peterson batted at 5. So they actually made two big changes that meant that Thorpe missed out in that series, and it was bye Butcher and bye Key. Key's getting his own back for that to this day, and I'm very happy with my lot.
Right, let's leave it there. Cheers for your time. Catch you next week.
Cheers, mate. Bye.
It's South Africa versus Australia in the WTC final. How did the two teams get there? South Africa finished top of the table, 8 wins from 12, just 3 defeats and 1 draw. They went on a 7-game winning streak to get to the final, a run that saw them win 2-0 in Bangladesh and then 2-0 at home to both Sri Lanka and Pakistan. They drew 1-1 to India earlier in the cycle. Australia, meanwhile, their 13 wins from 19, 4 defeats and 2 draws. Their cycle included the 2023 Ashes, that 3-1 series win at home to India, a 2-1 win in Sri Lanka and a 2-0 win in Sri Lanka and a 2-0 win in New Zealand. Dan, according to the rankings, Australia are the best side in the world. South Africa are a third, just behind England in second. How are you feeling about South Africa's chances in this game? Australia are favourites, but how much of a chance do you give the Proteas?
Thanks for having me on the pod. I want to give them a good chance, but I don't give them much of a chance. I think anything other than an Australian romp would probably constitute an upset. 70-30, if you want to put it in a figure, I think South Africa have a 30% chance of winning. I'm not a comic book guy, but I was thinking of that scene in one of the Marvel movies where one of the characters envisages the future in a billion different ways, and only one way do the goodies win. And I sort of see it that way. I think South Africa have to probably bowl Australia out cheaply in the first innings. I know weather looks like whoever wins the toss will probably bat first. But if Australia make more than 350 in the first dig, I think that's it. If it becomes a game of attrition where it's 400 plays something, I think that's it. I think if South Africa get bowled out for less than 200 in any one of the innings, I think that's it. So I think Markram has to make runs, Bavuma has to make runs. I think Jansen and Rabada basically have to get a lot of the wickets with the new ball. They have to get Travis Head facing a moving ball. If he comes out and the 180 for whatever, and he's facing an older ball, I think he makes the quickest 100 in World Test Championship final history. So the chances are narrow, but hey, it could happen. I kind of just want to see them put up a good fight, really.
Yeah. You're less optimistic than I thought you might be.
No, I want to come and thump my chest. I mean, I might also be protecting myself from, I've been down this road before.
Yes.
I've got many years of experience getting my hopes up with South African cricket when it counts. Yeah. I think they're a plucky team. I think they're a team that's more than the sum of their parts. I just don't think that they've got Rabada aside, Jansen potentially, Maharaj on his day. I don't think there's any superstars in the batting. I mean, I want Markram, you see him drive for the covers and you wonder how this guy doesn't average 60 in tests, but then he nicks off to the exact same ball to third slip and that's why. I think Bavuma's nuggetsy, battles, but I just don't see enough runs there.
Yeah. Ben, do you share Dan's pessimism on South Africa's behalf?
Well, I mean, Australia are clearly favourites when you just go down the 2 11s, but I'm not, I mean, I'd also go 70-30, but I'd look at that as being as meaning there's a decent game in prospect basis. I think South Africa do have the weapons that can hurt Australia. I go down that batting lineup, and I think that there's a reason why a lot of those guys have good records. I look at them, I think there's some good players of fast bowling in there. I think that they do have players that can make scores against this Australia attack, basically. And the bowling, similarly, obviously, Rabada's an absolute champion. Jansen just takes wickets every time he bowls. They have, there's a lot of ways they could go with that. with that third seamer slot, but that will round out the attack decently, I guess. But it's just a question of if enough of those guys come off to actually push Australia really close. I think it's one of those where like we could almost be kidding yourselves at the end of maybe day 2 that South Africa have half a chance because they're only 50 behind. Australia have 3 wickets left in their first innings or something, but actually then that ends up becoming the size of first innings lead. I can see South Africa having their moments in this game, but yeah, I think Australia are favourites for a reason, especially when you just go down that lineup, and it's like their selection debates are pretty envious ones to have, really.
On South Africa, how do we think they'll line up, Dan? I was trying to work out what that team looks like. Likely to be Markram and Rickleton up top. Bavuma's going to be in the middle order somewhere. Carl Verreynne is going to keep wicket. You'll definitely have Janssen, definitely have Rabada, probably have Maharaj unless...
Yeah, definitely. He'll definitely play.
And then the other one who people haven't watched a lot of South Africa recently, who people might not realise is someone who's almost certainly going to play, is Wiaan Mulder, who has established himself. And it's a really important figure in the team in terms of how it's balanced, in that he gives them both bowling and batting depth as someone who's a serviceable four-seamer, but also a pretty reliable batter. And you were saying before we started recording that he could bat 3.
Yeah, so Mulder's a funny one. He made his first-class debut when he was still a high school kid. There's a famous photo of him in the Lions dressing room where he's getting undressed and he's in his school uniform. And I was a young journalist myself, so I made the mistake of saying, okay, but here's the next Jacques Kallis, and I wasn't the only one.
Yeah, a lot of people...
Yeah, because he could bat and bowl, but he just sort of didn't really have the stature of Kallis, and that's understandable.
Yeah.
He's serviceable. That's the right word. He's not... You look at Australia's all-rounders, Cam Green and Webster, and they're both 2 meters tall and big, hefty units, like a classic Australian all-rounder. Mulder's like that, just smaller, I guess. And I guess size isn't everything, but it does count for something. I would be having him at bat at 3. And I think because 3 is... Your best player in the world can nick off a good ball at 3, and then you're suddenly 30 for 2, and you got an opener and your best batter at 3. Best batter in the shed. So kind of, I don't really mind who bats there. And then Bavuma can bat in his regular position at 5. So yeah, let's go through the order. So you got Rickleton and Markram. They've been confirmed as opening. Shukri Conrad has said that. I would have Mulder at 3. I'd have Stubbs at 4. Really fluent player. He's shown that he can dig in. When he's made his hundreds over the cycle, it wasn't through like flash and dash like we see in the white ball stuff. He's got a good game, a good temperament to him. Bavuma can come where he wants at 5. Bedingham can come at 6 and can force the issue. He's a gun player. He should have been playing Test cricket a long time ago. At 6, Verreynne at 7, and then the bowlers. And that third seamer is interesting. So, because Mulder would be the fourth seamer. Do they go with Dane Patterson? He's been bowling okay at Lords. I think South Africans have overblown how well he's bowled.
It's 11 wickets at 43 in Division 2 this year.
There you go. Yeah, I think we South Africans see the highlights, and there was that one spell that he bowled to Manus Labuschagne, and we think, oh, okay, well, here it is. But I watched him bowl a couple of times, and I thought he was fine. I like Dane Patterson, but I've got memories of Mark Wood and Stuart Broad tonking him around the Wanderers and making him look like a village trundler, basically. So Bosch can bowl gas, but he's wayward. He's got batting as well. Ngidi, I think, has always been a white ball bowler, even though he's got an average of 23 in tests. But I think that's because he hasn't really played many, and he had a good opening series against India, which kind of padded his stats a little bit. So I don't know who they go for. I think Shukri Conrad is going to go for Patterson. I personally would go for Bosch.
Yeah, it's interesting when you look at it, because we have this debate sometimes with England in terms of what your third seamer is different if you've got an all-rounder. So we were talking about it last week in that Matt Potts is a less appealing option for England when Stokes is bowling lots of overs, because you don't need a durable workhorse to be your third seamer. And I similarly think that if you've got Janssen, if you've got Rabada, and you've got Mulder doing a job, you might as well roll the dice and go for the guy who might not need to bowl loads of overs, but could on his day rip through the side. And that is Corbin Bosch. Corbin Bosch, I think, has only played 1 test, right?
Yeah, and he got an 80 and a 4 in the first innings and a couple of wickets in the second. And
so he can properly bat, so he lengthens that batting lineup. But also his bowling, even though he took lots of wickets, I remember watching that thinking, you can see how this goes badly. Because he bowls quite quickly, but it's a little bit wayward. But on his day, you can see how he could get really good players out. He just needs a spell. And if he's one of 4 seamers rather than 3, and you've got Maharaj, he doesn't have to do a lot of bowling if it goes badly. So to me, he's quite an exciting option. And Dane Paton, I understand why you might think, oh, he's got a really good county record historically. He's an English-style seamer. But pitches at this time of the year can be really slow, and bowlers like that can struggle.
Yeah, and Paton's done well in South Africa's run to the WTC final as well. I think the other thing with him, though, is that there's an argument that he could almost weaken that South Africa attack in some ways, because you might look at him and think that's a guy that needs the new ball if he's going to be successful. And actually, I feel like South Africa's best chance is going to be Jansen Rabada with that new ball, taking 2, 3, 4 early and getting them ahead of the game. The Mulder at 3 thing is interesting because that started almost by accident, right? Like he was playing against, I think it was Sri Lanka or Pakistan, the first of those those 2 series that South Africa basically had to win all of to get into the WTC final, and he broke his finger while early in the game, and so it got to the second. So he broke it on the second morning, and then the second South Africa batting again. And normally you'd think
it was a shoulder injury,
shoulder, that's right.
and he couldn't cut or pull.
Yeah.
So they figured, okay, well, if you're going to bat, you just play. Then you have to play straight, where you mostly do. That was the logic. At least that was the argument.
But it was kind of his thought as well, wasn't it?
He's
was
always seen himself as a batter.
He
doesn't want to be seen. He needed convincing to go at number 6 and become that 4th seamer. But if you ask him, what are you? He'll say, I'm a top order batter who bowls.
Mm-hmm.
So.
But because he didn't make a lot of runs in that innings. But you looked at the batsman and was like, oh, well, that now makes sense, basically, if you have some guy
and he has since got his maiden test ton, and the way he celebrated and the way his energy afterwards, watching from the side, you kind of see how players are. He just seems more at ease within the team. I think he feels, I was going to say, as you guys know, having scored test tons yourselves, once you get that first test ton, that first test fiver, you feel like you belong, I imagine.
I've dreamt about it, Dan. That's right. How it feels like in my dreams.
So yeah, good on him. I mean, the thing with Pat is, it's a great point you make. If he doesn't take the new ball, why is he playing? And if he's taking the new ball, you're taking it away from your guys who need to get the wickets. If for whatever value this has, he didn't start on the field when South Africa took the ball against Zimbabwe. Rabada and Jansen took the new ball, and Ngidi was first up. With Mulder, they were off the field before Mulder got a chance to bowl, but he was standing in the slip. So I've got a feeling that the team that took the field against Zimbabwe will be the team. Now, Ngidi's tall, so maybe that counts for something as well. He's not rapid, but he can push it through. I guess we're all just wishing that Heinrich Nokia hadn't decided to not take a central contract, because you put Nokia in there, and then all of a sudden I think it becomes maybe 60-40 now.
But also Gerald Coetzee, right? He's someone who burst onto the scene, and I was really surprised.
He's injured, I think.
But he's been playing in the IPL. Is it just they don't think he's
test
fit?
I don't think he can get through a test.
On Ngidi, I think there'll be people listening to this wondering, hang on, he averages 23 in Test cricket. Why are you umming and ahhing? So he just hasn't been part of this run. So he didn't play any of those 7 Test matches that South Africa won on the bounce, and he hasn't played a lot of Test cricket recently. Let's quickly do the Australia 11. As Ben, you said, their selection dilemmas are quite good selection dilemmas. It looks like the big 3 quicks are going to be fit. Nathan Lyon will play. Carey will take the gloves. Above that, Khawaja will definitely open. Smith will definitely bat at 4. Head will definitely bat at 5. It looks like Webster's going to be persisted with as the all-rounder. Cam Green is fit, but isn't fit to bowl. Suggestions are that Green's going to slot in at 3 and Labuschagne open. Other option is Constas, who obviously made that spectacular debut against India, but didn't play in Sri Lanka.
And Inglis as well,
and then
right?
Inglis, who made his debut in Sri Lanka and did really well, scored 100.
Yeah, I mean, I guess look, Green, even if he's not bowling, has to play. He's been in, okay, it's not the highest level, but he's come back in brilliant form in the Can Championship. I think that before he got injured, he was just on the verge of properly nailing it in Test cricket. He got that a brilliant 100 in New Zealand,
174.
Yeah, and it crazy scorecard if you go and look at it. So he has to play, even if it's just as a batter, but that does obviously then, you either just go in with your 4 bowlers, or you have to then sort of get Webster in, and then you have to sort of fudge it a bit, because I think that, Labuschagne as opener is a bit of a fudge, but I think it's almost like he's not been in the best form for actually quite a long time now, and you can almost see him kind of volunteering to do that, because he knows otherwise they might look at it and think like, well, where does this guy actually fit in? I think if you Constas, I'm not sure. I think he would just be down the pecking order because of how English went in Sri Lanka. I think if you because Constance, obviously that amazing start against India. If you want to pick a guy to smash the new ball, I think you trust Inglis to do that more than Constance, and that's not generally been the Australian way anyway. That was sort of a knees must situation for, an all-timer bowler who they had to try something different against. Against this attack, they might think that if we can survive that new ball burst, then, we'll be pretty well set to go big, and that would be Quadra and Labuschagne to do that. So yeah, it does make some sense, I guess. It's interesting to see. I felt like the Aussies were almost trying to confect selection dilemma over their bowling attacks. They're like, "Oh, could Boland come into it?" And it's like, no. You pick you pick the 4 guys who are one of the best 4 bowling quartets of all time, and that's what you do. But yeah.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I think on Labuschagne, even though he's not been in the best nick recently, I should remember even the 2023 50 over World Cup final, he wasn't in great nick, and he just is a player who's been in the cauldron for really big moments a lot. That is invaluable when you get to a final, so I think he should play regardless of where that position actually is.
I guess just one more thing actually on the bowling side of things with Webster. So I can see why they want to. First, he's a good player. He started well against India. I can see why they want to set him on his own merits. But in terms of team balance, what was interesting back to the last World Championship final is how bad the over rates were, and how that was almost felt like they were at times going almost deliberately slowly, because that allowed you to.
Was this Australia?
Yeah, well, but I mean, both sides over rates were bad, to be fair, but Australia in particular, I think, because that kind of allowed you to sort of rest your seam attack kind of in game. I think there was about a session's worth of overs lost across the first 4 days of the game, which is sort of mad. But then that is like a 4th bowler's worth of overs, basically. But they might also just think that Webster is a guy they want in the team anyway, which would be fair enough.
Dan, how big is this for South African cricket?
Massive. Yeah, I've written that I think it's the most important single test match in South Africa's history for a number of reasons. One, to get the monkey off the back, to just win something. To know what every other major test cricket nation has felt. After New Zealand won the first one, they had a trophy lift, and like I said in a piece recently for The Guardian, is that had the World Test Championship existed 20 years ago, we wouldn't be having this conversation, because Graham Smith's team probably would have won 2 in a row, maybe would have gone for a 3rd with that generational side of Cullis and AB and Steyn, etc. But they've not yet won something. So I just think that they are. Bavuma told me that there's a desperation about the team, and he sort of, as he said the word, he's like, oh, maybe I shouldn't say that. He's like, it's a healthy desperation, but he's like, actually, you know what? We are desperate to win, and I think there's no point beating around the bush. Actually, he told me that for you guys, for the magazine. And I think it's good. I think it's good to be honest about that. South Africans have tried all sorts of ways with sports psychologists and mental skills gurus. Do we talk about choking? Do we not talk about choking? Do we say that we really want it? Do we say that it doesn't define us? I think they're saying we really want this because it matters. For the country, I don't know if this would like resonate with the broader population in the way that, say, Siya Kolisi's Rugby World Cup win did. I don't think you're going to see young kids from Langa running along the streets of a ticker tape parade bus, but maybe it would. I mean, certainly Bavuma would be heralded as a hero. Black captain of a country still largely divided by race, representing a sport that is still largely white run, as it were. So I think there's a cultural element to it. But broader, I think it would allow Cricket South Africa to say to teams, don't you want to come and play the champions? You know, they've got no home test scheduled for this year, for the first time ever since readmission, which is a damning indictment on Cricket South Africa. I feel for the players who are desperate for playing test cricket. We'll talk about 2 youngsters coming up who could have become white ball mercenaries but want to play test cricket. So I think they need a carrot to say to boards, okay, India, you're coming for 2 tests. Why don't we make it 3? They're playing the champions. England, you're coming for 3 tests next summer. Is there a way that we can make it a 4th? I know the schedules are tight, but if you've got that, I mean, England went and played 3 tests against New Zealand, I think largely because they were test champions and it meant something, even though Ben Stokes might want to denigrate the competition. I think that matters, and I think it proves to the rest of the world that Cricket South Africa take test cricket seriously, because right now it looks like they couldn't really care about the format.
Just very quickly on the upcoming South African home summer. So there was that famous series against New Zealand where the tour to New Zealand coincided with the SA20, and the way it was framed was, this is unfortunate given how far in advance the schedule was done. And right now, Cricket South Africa needs to prioritise this new competition to safeguard our financial future. I understand that it was deeply unfortunate. It was a bad look for the health of Test cricket. How has this happened? This feels worse. South Africa not playing a single home Test match at all.
I mean, the official line is that they are going to upgrade the stadiums ahead of the 2027 home World Cup, the 50 over World Cup. Some of the stadiums, I don't know if you guys have been, but some of the stadiums do need a touch up. I mean, the Wanderers, I think, is the home of world cricket with respect to Lords, but I think the Wanderers is good, Newlands is good, but even Newlands is looking a bit tired in places. The other grounds, the smaller grounds that will be hosting games, definitely need a touch up. So there's that. They've also said that this gives the women's team, who have punched above their weight, I would say maybe pound for pound one of the best cricket teams in the world. It gives them a rare chance to stand on center stage. They'll be hosting a test. But how's it come about? Geez, yes. I mean, that's the $1 million question. If I had the answer, I would be writing it. I mean, a lack of political will, mismanagement. Maybe the bean count is realizing that if we take a breather before a bumper summer the following year, where they've got 2 tests against Bangladesh and then 3 each against Australia and England, which is, I mean, that is a healthy summer.
Yeah.
You know, even in any circumstance, even if things were looking a lot better. So maybe they figure, okay, that will cost us a fair bit. We'll make some money, but maybe we're going to save a little bit for that. I don't know the answer. I would love. I've asked the question. Journalists have asked the question. I don't think that any of us have ever got a satisfying answer.
It feels that there's a couple of things at play as well. It's one of the things with the World Test Championship, I guess, is that if you have 3 home series to play across 2 years, and as say they've done it, they're getting them all in the one summer, then that then means that unless you want to play something outside the tournament, you're not going to do that in the previous year. I guess there's also, in this particular instance, again, there's an SA20 effect, right, where there's a T20 World Cup, which is kind of pushing a few things a bit further forward, and I think that's happening with the SA20 as well. And they're also, they're not playing Test cricket at all. They're touring in that time. That's when they're going to India, isn't it? So, but it's still, I mean, you can always find sort of mitigating factors, as with the previous S20 thing. You can also look at the World Game and South Africa in particular and say, could you try a bit harder? Because that was the same with that SA20 thing, going back to it, is that like yes, you can see what they want to prioritize that tournament, but there were very, very fringe SA20 players who could have been good Test players on that side, or there were players who were even actually knocked out of the SA20 quite a long time before that series started, or at least before the second Test, who were also not, pushed into that squad. Like, I think it's one of these things where you've all just got to be work a bit harder, and it will make actually quite a big difference.
Dan, you referenced the piece you wrote for the magazine a couple of months ago, and in that piece, I don't think I'm misremembering, there was a section on the conversations that were being had in the South African dressing room during that game against Pakistan, where it was, for people who didn't watch it, South Africa ended up winning by 2 wickets, I think, and Rabada bats like prime Brian Lara, to get South Africa over the line. And there was some internal explicit referencing the choking thing. It's a final, Dan. We've got to talk about it. How much do you think it actually impacts the players now? Because I've heard this discourse in other sports, and people say, well, how can a team's historic failure in certain situations, before some players were even born, some players in this African side were born after the 99 World Cup semi-final against Australia, how can that actually tangibly affect players 26 years later? But
I do think what has happened with Cricket South Africa is that there's a generational trauma. I think that when Kesha Maharaj is facing Bumrah in the T20 World Cup final last year, and he prods one to cover and runs, even forgetting that it's the last ball over, which means he's going to keep the strike, therefore keep David Miller off strike, I think his mind has gone blank. I think he is experiencing what few of us can understand, maybe none of us can understand, about what it's like to be a Protea in a high pressure moment, thinking, God, I hope I'm not the guy who writes another chapter in this long, painful story. And even if they're not thinking about it, they would have thought about it the day before, or they would have thought about it as they were waiting to bat next, or while they're standing at fine leg waiting for their chance to bowl. I do think that there is a psychological grip on this team. I think choking, though, comes from expectation. And I think the lack of expectation in this game, I think that's what the lack of expectation is, why they played so well in the final up until they started to actually have a chance of winning it. Because the fact that they made a game of that against India, exceeded expectations.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they must have looked up and thought, guys, are we on here?
Well, that's the amazing thing about that final is that if you said before the game, this final will be remembered as another South Africa choke, you'd be like, what?
It would have exceeded expectations.
What?
That's right.
It feels similar with this one, right?
Exactly.
There are no expectations. Really
exactly. So say we get chest thumping South Africanism.
It's okay.
Yeah. So alluding to what you were saying, or getting back to what you were saying, they were chasing a pretty low score, modest score. I can't remember exactly what it was against Pakistan. They had about 10, 15 overs to navigate on the end of day 3. Mohammad Abbas gets about 3 of them. They're 3 down. Bavuma and Markram are still to bat, are going to carry on batting the next day. And Shukri Conrad says, do you want to be the effing guys who choke when your country needed you, or do you want to be the guys who actually got it done? And Bavuma recalls that you could have heard a pin drop. Like this was not the rousing speech Conrad was hoping for. It actually terrified them, which shows that it does still impact them, because none of them have had choked, really.
Yeah.
I mean, T20 World Cup final aside. And then the next day, Mohammad Abbas bowls one of the best spells of bowling I've ever seen. And all of a sudden, they are choking. And they've gone from needing 80 with like 8 wickets, with 7 wickets in hand, to needing 60 with 3 wickets in hand. And yeah, Rabada bats like Brian, they call him Brian KG Rabada, Brian Charles Rabada, whatever it is. Jansen's with him. They get over the line. So maybe that showed them that they can do things when the pressure's on, but God, if they repeat that again against Australia and they get to that situation, I don't know how I'm going to handle it.
Just finally on the WTC, what do you think about it more generally? The ECB chair, Richard Thompson, a few months back questioned the fairness of the competition's structure, saying it is fully understood that the structure does not work in the way it should, and we need to find a fairer, better competition. The World Test Championship should be fairer and more competitive, blah, blah, blah. I read that as a little bit of a dig towards how South Africa have got to the final. That there's a perception that South Africa's fixture list was easier than, say, England's. A, what would you say to that? And B, what do you think about the current structure of the WTC?
Well, I think a few things can be true at the same time. I think that South Africa did have an easier run. Of course they did. England and Australia are number 1 and 2 in the world. India, top 3. They played India at home. If they played India away, they would have got spanked, as they always do. They didn't play Australia and England. Yes, they had an easier run. No doubt about that. Is the World Test Championship fair that not everyone plays everyone? I would say not. I think there should be an equitable distribution of games. It's not Cricket South Africa's fault that they don't play marquee series as much as England, Australia, and India do. So if anyone wants to criticize that some teams don't play others, I would say don't look at the Test Championship. Look at the way world cricket is structured. And we've spoken about this many times. People know what I'm alluding to. But do South Africa deserve to be there? Well, deserve's a big word. We were talking just off air. When England won the 1966 Football World Cup, they didn't play Brazil, who were the reigning champions. When Nadal has won Wimbledon without playing Federer along the way when Federer was in his prime. Is that fair? Other people had to play Federer. When South Africa won the 2007 Rugby World Cup, they didn't play Australia or New Zealand. Is that fair? No, that's how tournaments go. Sometimes you get a lucky draw. You were saying England have these semi-final runs in Euros and World Cups, but only because they don't play anyone good.
100%. Every England major football tournament, I get up the draw and think, well, hang on, if they lose to them, England can get to the final without playing anyone.
Is that fair? No, but also yes, because that's how tournaments work. But also, Andy Zaltzman pulled out a great stat that if you took every single team's results and you only included the results against the team South Africa played, South Africa still finished second. If South Africa played Australia and lost 2-0, in addition to all the games they played, South Africa still finished second. They didn't lose to West Indies. West Indies beat Australia. They didn't lose to Bangladesh or Pakistan. They beat them both, and including England, those teams all sort of lost against each other. England chucked away series that they should have won. They should have whitewashed. Do they deserve to do it? Yeah, I'd say they do deserve to be there.
I completely agree. I mean, on that comparison with England didn't clean sweep Sri Lanka at home. South Africa did. England lost in Pakistan, who lost to Bangladesh, who lost 2-0 at home to South Africa. England's equivalent away trip to Asia was a 2-1 defeat in Pakistan. So I 100% think that South Africa are more deserving finalists than England.
England and Australia also didn't beat Bangladesh the last times they went there, which South Africa which South Africa did. And the other thing as well is, if we're talking about like fairness or not, is like, well, please lay out a solution, because the overarching reason why not every team plays every team in the World Test Championship is because that would mean that India would have to play Pakistan in a bilateral series, which obviously not going to happen. So like,
and the big boys want to play each other as much as possible.
So that as well. So like, why are you saying this is an issue when this is an issue that, like, either go and say that to India and say, fine, we want next to World Test Championship, therefore you're going to have to play Pakistan. Tom's not going to do that. Or say, okay, well, fine, we'll have some cycles where we won't play both India and Australia. That's also your choice.
I mean, England haven't played Bangladesh in a test match in 9 years now. They haven't hosted Bangladesh in a test series in 15 years. We're talking about before we started. England haven't toured South Africa now for 5 years. It'll be 6 years between tours of South Africa. You're completely right. The reason why it's not as fair as it could be is because the big teams don't play the teams they should be playing more often. Finally, on South Africa, Dan, they've named a squad for their upcoming tour of Zimbabwe, and there's some amazingly exciting names in it. Dewald, Brevis, and young Pretorius, who's just 19, an amazing SA20, and has had an amazing start to his first-class career. It is just good as a neutral cricket observer to see these exceptional talents clearly having a desire to play Test cricket.
Yeah, I mean, Brevis and Pretorius could be I don't want to get ahead of myself, but you know, there's like,
but they're two of the best young players in the world.
I'm Le de Villiers, you know, like that.
Another Mulder Callis situation.
No, well, exactly. That's why I'm caveating. Please do not tweet them and tell them anything. But you look at them and you just think, God, they're guns, aren't they? They just, you watch a young player. England have got a couple of them right now. You know, Bethel and whoever else. You just watch them and you think, God, this guy's going to make a lot of runs, no matter what format he plays, no matter who's bowling, no matter what conditions. Like, just give him a bat and let him do his thing. So you're right. The fact that they are playing Test cricket, the fact that they've both said, well, at least Brevis has said, I don't know if Pretorius has said it, but the fact that he's immersed himself so much in first-class cricket and made a lot of runs, hundreds and big hundreds, shows that they care, and it's important. We were talking about like what it means for South Africa. You can never judge things by comments below the line or comments on Twitter, but I've got so many comments under pieces that I've written and things that I've put out there that people don't care, that they just feel the sense of ennui about cricket in South Africa, that certainly Test cricket, they're not going to have a home summer, so that's another summer without fans watching and caring and engaging and finding stories and connecting with the players and wanting to pay money in a country that is going through some financial difficulties. So if you've got two young players who have exploded in the SA20 and are playing in tournaments around the world, and they can connect with a young audience, and they themselves can say, we care about Test cricket, that's how you get people to care. That's how you get fans to spend money. That's how you get Cricket South Africa to look at the gate receipts. The whole ecosystem needs the players. I mean, I thought Kohli was I don't know why he was so punchy after claiming what must have been a massive life achievement, but still deciding to sort of denigrate what he had done by bigging up Test cricket. I thought that was a little odd. But yeah, the romantic in me was like, yeah, go on, Virat. You know, there's one for us, right? So these two young kids, I hope they won't play 100 Test matches, but I hope they play as many as they can, and they both retire 36 or 37 with averages of 50, and they go down as Test legends. I mean, that's the dream.
I mean, on South Africans retiring potentially earlier than they could. Heinrich Klaasen retired at the age of 33 from international cricket last week, and we talked about it on last week's show. But he has since done a round of interviews this week where he said that under the previous coach, there was more of a plan for how he could still play the franchise cricket that he wants and make the 2027 World Cup at home. For context, he's one of the best ODI players in the world, still is. It feels like there's not as much flexibility there that there could be. Or do you have sympathy for the South African setup?
Yeah, I mean, I hate to bitter both you, but it is a bit of both. I understand that Klaasen, 33, you say one of the best one-day players in the world. That shot he plays where he just smacks spinners off the back foot between like mid-off and cover. We'll start seeing that in like 50, everyone will start playing that in 5 years' time, and he'll be I mean, it's generally one of the most destructive shots. It's why no spinners can bowl to him. Really, it's incredible. So. Yeah, I'd say in the middle overs, he's probably the best batter in world cricket. But again, I might be biased. Yeah, I feel for him. He wants to spend time with his family. He wants to make coin, you know. Cricket South African central contracts don't pay as much. If he was Australian and English, he might not be chasing the freelance gigs. I also have sympathy for Shukri Conrad, who wants to come and say, if you're playing for South Africa, you have to play all the bilateral series. Again, we talk about the ecosystem. If Heinrich Klaasen is not playing, does that mean that some fans aren't buying tickets for a game against the West Indies in Potchefstroom? Maybe. So you want your best players available. You also want to build a squad. You want to build vibes. It's why Nokia is not playing in this final. He wanted to play, but Shukri said, "You're not a central contracted player. You haven't been part of this journey. You're not playing." Even though he walks into this, if you put on Nokia, it's a different attack. So I've got sympathy for both. I respect Conrad's decision. I would have loved to have seen a compromise reached, but I understand why one wasn't possible.
Cool. Well, that's it for part 2. In part 3, England. For this year's first Kia movement that inspires moment, Kia are giving you the chance to win 4 tickets to the England-India Women's T20I on July the 4th at the Kia Oval. In 2023, the England women's game against Australia broke attendance records at the Kia Oval, and this year you could be there to experience history again. For a chance to win, all you need to do is enter via the link in the description. A reminder that we have been so busy on the Patreon channel this week, 33 episodes in the month of June alone, which is, Ben, more episodes than there are days in the month.
Yeah, that's only if every game goes 5 days, though. Is that right?
That is true, actually.
Yeah,
that's
so we
true.
might get down to a pod a day if we're lucky.
Yeah, I'm praying for 3-day games both at Lords and at Leeds in the coming weeks. And also, viewers on YouTube might be able to work out that we're not at Lords. The studio's unavailable when the WTC final is going on, but instead we're at our second home, the Pavilion End pub run by Fullers in central London. You can see St Paul's Cathedral from the front door. It's a cricket themed pub in the heart of London, loads of screens to watch sport. When you came in here at 10 in the morning, they were showing reruns of England West Indies yesterday on the big screen. So that's the sort of pub it is. A great location. There's a function room that we're in at the moment. Highly, highly recommend it if you're anywhere near it. On England West Indies, Ben, England are 2-0 up in the T20I series. Brook's first series as full-time captain in T20 cricket. Butler's been really good, 96 in the first game, runs in the second. Everyone contributed in the second game with the bat as England, well, other than Jamie Smith, as England chased 197, which is their highest ever successful chase in a home T20I. Another factor in the series is that Liam Dawson has come back in for the first time in 2.5 years. We obviously love him on the show. He took 4 for 20 in the first game. And then another returnee, Luke Wood, took 2 for 25, including a wicket with the first ball of the game yesterday. It feels like there's a really clear identity this team that had often been missing. If you think about the Butler-Mott era, you'd think about the dismal World Cup defence in 2023, and England had no idea what their best team was. They'd veer dramatically in terms of tactics from one game to the next in terms of team balance. Whereas here, England were playing on maybe the most unfriendly ground in the world to ball spin in T20 cricket at Bristol, tiny ground. Yet they stuck to their plan of having 12 overs to spin because there's this World Cup in India and Sri Lanka coming up. There's a real identity to this team already.
Yeah, it's that World Cup coming up, and it's also the balance of this side. I mean, Dawson was coming in at 9 yesterday, I think, wasn't he? I mean, they don't end up needing him because of how deep they bat. When you've got, Bethel and Jax are 2 of your rounders, that's really healthy. I mean, their spin has room to develop. I think Jax is coming on really nicely. I think Bethel, there's been moments, but that's why also if you end up picking a sort of it's not just that they want to see how the balance works, that if you end up picking another specialist bowler for a game, then you end up don't using Bethel, and then he doesn't get that experience as well. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of boxes being checked for sure. I mean, also Tom Banton in that finisher role yesterday, nailing like pretty much the hardest job in cricket.
30 off 11, first time he's ever batted 6 in a T20.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, that is really, really encouraging stuff. And it's kind of all going sort of, okay, the ODI series, you sort of maybe looked and thought that I know England have been more down ODI cricket than other formats, but that should be the mismatch with West Indies not qualifying for that last World Cup. This is the format in T20s where it should be closer, really, and yet England have, kept West Indies at arm's length throughout. To the point, I guess the one question I suppose over the make of the side is what do they do when Phil Salty's on paternity leave when he's actually back? I mean, he is one of the most in-demand openers in world cricket. He's a back-to-back IPL champion, but also they have looking like they're investing in this kind of this core of sort of young, exciting batters. And yeah, and so how they fit back in it is a question. But beyond that, it's they couldn't have gone much better, really.
Yeah, I think so. Will come straight back in for Smith. I think it's really interesting what they're doing with Banton. In Harry Brook's own words in the ODI series, he was talking about how he wanted Will Jacks at 7, who's a proper batter who can score hundreds. And they've got a similar side in the T20s with Banton at 6, Will Jacks at 7. Those are proper T20 batters. I know they've not been finishers very much in T20 cricket, but I like that England have essentially just backed who they think the best 7 T20 batters are, and hope that the order works itself out. It does mean that England are a little bit light on bowling options in that Bethell/Jacks is the 5th bowler. Bethell/Jacks went at basically a runner ball yesterday in a very, very high scoring game. So that worked out. And it feels like England are being very smart as to when they're bowling them in innings. Bethell bowled the 7th over, for example, the other day, which is almost always the quietest over in the T20, first over off the power play. And it means that I think there'll be lots of times in the next year, if England persist with this, where Dawson and Rashid, as it happened in Bristol, bowl very difficult overs to spinners. And their figures might not look amazing, but England will feel like they've done a really good job. So in the Bristol game, Dawson bowls 2 overs in the power play, 1 at the death. The over at the death goes for 19. Adil Rashid bowls the penultimate over that goes for 31. Jason Holder enjoying the short boundaries. But it means that Jacks and Bethell can bowl the easier overs in inverted commas, in the middle overs. And actually, I think England look like they're happy with that.
Yeah, and the other thing you can sort of neglect, if say you have a 5th bowler who is sort of better than a combined 5th bowler, sort of just by the overs they bowl, but actually, if you're a 5th bowler, you can't bowl 4 overs in a row. Whereas if you're a combined 5th bowler, you actually, not that England quite did that yesterday, but there will be times when they could just bowl overs 7 to 10 between them, and then that's them done basically. And then the other thing with Rashid is that, you know, even though he gets smashed yesterday, he still bowls. There's sort of one moment the wins England the game, bowling a brilliant ball to, I think it was to Shy Hope, who had actually looked in brilliant touch. A lot of the first portion of that game was just him absolutely mullering it to fielders and then kind of yelling because he knew he'd missed out on one, but he looked in supreme form. So yeah, no, it does make sense. And yeah, Banton also, the profile just makes sense as a finisher, as well as, you know, the fact that he did the job well. There was one shot he played that just sticks out where he shaped to go for that little flick he does. Holder saw him doing it, so went for like the base of leg stump Yorker, and then somehow Banton just kind of like sort of contorts his torso and his wrist and somehow still flicks it away. It was absolutely crazy. And yeah, it's exciting times.
Yeah, and just on Wood and Dawson, they're 2 players who basically play loads of T20 cricket, which might sound like an obvious point, but England quite often pick guys who are in all their squads. So even if you go back to when they won the T20 World Cup a few years ago, you had Stokes, who basically doesn't really play much T20 cricket, Wokes, who doesn't really play a lot of T20 cricket, and even more recently, Potts made his debut in the first game. Cast. These guys don't actually play much league cricket, whereas Luke Wood plays loads. He just had a good PSL. He's had a really good BBL in years gone by. Dawson is one of the most sought after finger spinning all-rounders in the world. And they just know their roles so much. And I think there's a value in that. And I think come the World Cup, you can just slot someone into a T20 side as long as you know what their role is and they know what their role is coming up to it. So I think I've been more excited by these 2 T20s than I was by the ODIs, because I think there was quite a big gap in quality between the 2 teams in the 50 over stuff.
Yeah, I mean, Luke Wood, you could just see clearly he knew exactly what he was doing the whole time. And so, you know, you might think that a guy playing his first game for England in like, what was it? In 21 months, I think.
Yeah.
That there might be some nerves coming back in. He's thinking like, oh, you know, I've got to, you know, justify my place. And actually there was absolutely none of that, because he knows when he's got a new white ball and condition in his favour, he can bowl it like full enough. He's got zippy pace. He can move it around. He can take wickets. And he did that brilliantly for the first 2 overs where he barely went for a run and he took that wicket with the very first ball. And then actually when he comes back in the middle, he's bowling in a completely different way, where he's kind of, you know, going a bit slower. He's into the pitch. He's got some variations, and then he gets another wicket then, which is, you know, also helps to, well, actually, I guess doesn't peg West Indies back that much, but still, it was a brilliant over just in and of itself. But he's doing 2 different things, and there's not like England have had to coach him at all to do that. It's just like, okay, I'm Luke Wood, I'm bowling the 15th over of a T20. these are my ground conditions, this is what I do, because he's been in very similar situations to that.
And just finally on that, it was quite interesting watching Biden Carson in comparison to Luke Wood yesterday. There'd be a few moments where Carson took absolutely ages at the top of his mark to work out what the field was. You had Duckett, who looks like he's properly Brook's right-hand man at the moment. Duckett and Brook were in conversation with him for a long time, working out, hang on, what's the field? What's the plan? Where are you going to bowl? With Luke Wood, there's absolutely none of that. He blows hot and cold. I'm not saying Luke Wood's going to open the bowling for England in the World Cup when everyone's fit, but I do like that England look like they're more open to the guys who just play T20 cricket, basically, rather than focusing on a group of seamers who are available across formats. England Lions have been in action against India again. Very quickly on this, the two things that have really stood out from an England point of view is how the new ball bowlers have gone. Chris Woakes and Josh Tongue, who very realistically could be opening the bowling for England in that first test match against India. Woakes has been brilliant. He's been very economical. He's got that new ball talking. It looks like prime Woakes, to be honest, and you can easily forget this is a guy with 137 home wickets at 21, even forgetting his work with the bat. Tongue, who's obviously had a really exciting start to the summer with knots, hasn't looked great, to be honest. He's been very loose, going at 4 to 5 runs and over. And because of his pace and bats, when he gets it right, it looks great. But he's bowling a lot of hit-me balls. And against batters of the class, even in that India A side, who've got Jaiswal and Karun Nair and KL Rahul, they've milked him quite easily. So, yeah, who knows? He might rediscover his rhythm ahead of that first test match. But I think this is a game where Chris Woakes is properly nailed on to play that first test match. And I think Tongue probably was before this game. But I think his participation at the Headingley test match is probably less likely now after this game than it was before it. The Blast has been going on. If you want to hear a good 20 minutes on the Blast, we'll be doing another episode on the Patreon on that tomorrow morning. Headlines, Jimmy is taking wickets for fun, which is great. It means that he might really well be a wildcard player in the 100 on merit as well, which would be great.
That would be great. Do you want the stat on that? So I guess you can split his T20 career into thirds, one of which is 8 days long, but let's just... so you've got the first 11 years of his career, he takes 1 3-wicket haul. That's actually for England. Then he goes 11 years without playing a T20, and then he's come back into Lancashire sides. He's taken 2 3-fers in a week. So he's tripled his career T20 3-wicket haul tally at the age of 42 or whatever it is. So.
Yeah, stuff for dreams, I'm sure, for Jimmy. Ben Sanderson is now the best bowler in the world. He took 6 for 8 the other day to continue his ridiculous start to the Blast. And then the other notable performance of the ball was Hassan Ali taking a hat-trick yesterday for Birmingham Bears. As I said, you can hear all our Blast chat on the Patreon.
One more, Nathan McAndrew took 5 wickets in his first 2 overs as well.
Huge.
So yeah,
Huge.
Doesn't get better than that.
Before we finish today's show, we've got Joe dialing in from Ireland. Joe, there's a new magazine out this week, this Thursday. What's in it?
Well, unsurprisingly, we focused our attention predominantly on the India-England series. Loads of good stuff on that to preview it, and also a piece from Phil reflecting on the 1990 series with Graham Gooch and a very young Sachin making his maiden Test 100. But it's predominantly stuff about this summer. Adya has done a really good preview looking at how the Indian team is shaping up in this post-Kohli Rohit world with Shubman Gill as the figurehead. Talking about the fact that Indian sides used to come over here with quite a lot of trepidation because they didn't really play the swinging ball very well. They didn't have great seamers themselves. And that even though Rohit and Kohli have gone, they've got such enormous resources that nothing really holds any fear for them. But it is odd they haven't won a series over here since 2007. It would be an amazing way for Shubman Gill to kick off his captaincy if he can. Adja also speaks to Nitesh Kumar Reddy, who I think it's fair to say isn't a man short on confidence after his first Test tour of Australia. He says he wants to be the number 1 all-rounder in the world. Be interesting to see if he makes that 11 for Headingley. He certainly seems very much in the mix. And a really good piece from Ben on Jasprit Bumrah. There's not much you can write about Bumrah that hasn't already been written, but he's come from the perspective of the batter, saying what's it actually like to stand at the other end and face him? What are the unique challenges that he poses? And he's got hold of Dean Elgar, who played against Bumrah in Bumrah's debut Test series. And Elgar's got out to him a few times over the years. He's also had some success against him too. And that's a really fascinating insight into what it's like to see that ball coming down from Bumrah and some of the peculiarities of facing him.
What are the columnists up to this month?
Columnists, we've got Lawrence Booth bidding farewell to Virat Kohli, the good and the bad of Kohli, and the fact that it was definitely time to go, in his view, based on his recent record. But also, even though it was definitely time to go, that he'll be a sorely missed presence this summer, that the game will be lesser for it. I'm back in touch with Sean Williams, my best bud now, and we go through his month in our new feature, The Diary, and he talks about the challenge of taking on England and the tour itself after such a long time. We've got Andrew Miller looking at drugs in cricket, I suppose inspired by the Rabada story, but more broadly than that, talking about in the T20 era that the drugs, performance-enhancing drugs, which obviously isn't in the case of Rabada, but can actually have an impact in a way that they wouldn't have done previously, and some of the the challenges that the game might face to deal with that. And what else have we got? We've got in the county files, we've got loads of good stuff in there, but probably the pick of it is Sam Dalling speaking to James Rue about his month as well. Obviously in his first test call-up, playing alongside his younger brother at Somerset briefly as well, Thomas, who apparently is a serious player. I'm sure we'll be hearing plenty more from both of them over the months and years to come. As
I said, the magazine is out on Thursday, but Joe, you got a special offer for listeners.
I have. I also, two more features I wanted to flag. Katya's piece, which is absolutely brilliant, came in about 3 times the word count that we'd asked her for, but it was so good, we've pretty much got it all in there. Investigating the human impact of the ECB's ban on trans women in recreational cricket. Really an extension of the podcast episode from a few weeks back. I think with this story, it becomes easy to get bogged down in the legal details and the technicalities without actually talking about the personal stories. And that's what that podcast did so well. And Katya has spoken to 4 or 5 people involved about how it's impacted them. So we're not just talking about this theoretically, we're talking about the actual human impact. It's a real eye-opener, and whichever side of the argument you fall on, I'd urge you to read it to become more informed. I certainly was by the end of it. Rob Smythe, in his new brilliant series, Lost Treasures, his next one is a Trinidadian quick who looked like he was going to be, the next Joel Gardner, and he disappeared very, very quickly indeed. So we dig into his story, and we've got Phil speaking to James Taylor. I know we've had some of that stuff on the pod about Leicestershire's story, but really diving into James's traumatic end to his playing career. There's no other word for it really, but also his new life as a coach and how one has bled into the other. So loads of great stuff to get stuck into as we start the test summer in earnest. And sorry, that offer, yes, the most important bit, otherwise I'll get told off. So this month you can subscribe to the print version of WCM. The price is starting at $39.99, and you automatically get entered into a draw to win one of 2 brand new Kookaburra bats. We have a Kookaburra Stealth and a Kookaburra Ghost to give away to 2 subscribers, 3.1 grade, both with a recommended retail price of £375. Which, even if you don't like cricket or bats, you might as well enter the draw, and you could always sell it. I'm not sure that's how we should be promoting this prize, but just it's an option open to you if you want to go down that route. So you can subscribe at wisdensubs.com. That is wisdensubs.com, using the code Kookaburra25, and that's all in caps, and you automatically enter the draw with a chance to win. I'm afraid for this one, it's only open for UK listeners. And there are more details on that subscription page, wisdensubs.com.
Well, cheers, Joe. We'll leave all the info for that in the description, so you don't need to rewind to hear all the details. Cheers for your time, mate. See you later.
Nice one. Cheers, Yaz.
That is everything for today's show. Cheers, Ben. Cheers, Dan. Great to have you on, as always. This summer, Kia want to help you and your family get closer to the action and create inspiring moments that last a lifetime. On September the 14th, we are giving back to young cricket fans and offering 11 to 14-year-olds the chance to train at the Kia Oval with top coaches from Surrey before playing in a tournament on the pitch itself to show everything that you've learned. If your child is 11 to 14 and would like to have this experience, all you need to do is enter by the link in the description.